Hi everyone, and thank you, Rasmus, for that lovely introduction. Proud geek and Taekwondo nerd, maybe, something like that. Really happy to be here. I'm Linda Mannila, and I'm going to talk about AI and why it's already here, and maybe a bit about also why we are not ready. As Rasmus already said, I am a researcher, so I work in computer science education, so focusing a lot on how can we get people to learn about computer science, which I think is something that everybody should know more about, and that will probably become clear also during this speech. I also run my own company and a non-profit, which also have the same agenda and the same vision there as well. So I usually introduce myself as being a person working at the crossroads of digitalization, education, and societal development. And today I'm here on behalf of the FITech network, which is a network of Finnish universities which offer continuing education in the tech area to people, anybody interested, actually. So talking about AI in 20 minutes, that's not a small challenge, it's a huge challenge, so let's get started. But a couple of words first about how I turned out to become a proud geek. And we're back to the Commodore 64 that we already heard about as well. And it all started on Christmas Eve when I was 8 or 9 years old. I don't really remember when. And there was this strange gift under our Christmas tree. And it didn't have a name on it. So I went talk to my mother and my father, and nobody actually knew about it. But then at some point of time, I found out that, okay, so my mom told us that, okay, so this is for our father because he has wanted this toolbox for a long time, but we can't really tell him because he's not expecting it. And me and my brother, we had wished for this Commodore 64, but now we weren't. It seemed like we wouldn't get it after all. Came Christmas Eve, we sat down and started opening the presents, and then the strange package was still there under the Christmas tree. And then my mom said that, okay, so this now is for you, Dad. Now you can open this present. And it turned out this was their way of hiding things from us kids, because they did the same thing later on as well with something that was more for my brother, and then it was said to be coffee cups for my mom. So my dad started opening the present, and out of the present didn't come a toolbox, but this computer, a Commodore 64, the one that we had wished for. And that opened up a completely new world to me, both because we could start playing games, etc., but also that I realized that this is a piece of technology that I can actually control myself. I can contribute to this. Sure, I didn't create any Angry Birds, no Spotifys, nothing fancy like that. But compared to the other technology that I had at that point, TV, I had the channels I did. I couldn't actually, if I wanted a new channel, I couldn't do that on my own. So the technology around me was already predefined. But with the computer, I could start defining my own technology. If it was then only a quiz like we were talking about with Rasmus earlier, or a flying balloon that slowly progressed on the screen, all of this was something that was new and that you could do with that computer. So that was my start back in the day to how I turned out to become a proud geek. And that also brought me to Åbo Academy to study computer science and later on work further in this area. And of course, technology has changed quite a lot since back then. We have it everywhere. It's faster, it looks different, and it has also become more invisible. Sure, we have the hardware, we have the computers, we walk around with the internet in our pockets, but everything but the hardware has become hard to get at. We can't really see it. We click a button on the phone and all of a sudden we have a new software. We don't have to get the disks anywhere. We don't have to understand it. And this is a huge difference to the computer that I had as my first one. The technology that we started to use in the 80s, for instance. Today, we don't see the underlying technology. And many people have said, for instance, Steve Jobs in '95 has said that great technology is invisible, that you can't notice it. You don't necessarily see the technology. That's when it's successful. You just go about working, using technology, and you don't have to worry about it being there. You just do it. You assume it will work. We assume electricity, for instance, a successful technology. We don't go about thinking about, oh, now I will turn the light on. That will use electricity. We just use it. The same with digitalization, more or less. We use the internet, we use software, and we just assume that it will be there. And when is the only time that we actually notice it? It's when it doesn't work, right? That's when we realize that, I don't have electricity, I can't turn on my computer, or for us Finns, it's really difficult if we can't get our cup of coffee in the morning. When Facebook or the Meta services lies down, it becomes headline news in the state media. Yle makes interviews with people of what did you do when Facebook was down? So the technology is invisible. And of course, that's good in one sense, because we could just focus on using it. But what when it doesn't work? And then when society all of a sudden changes, or somebody else takes the power in some country, or somebody takes over a company, and things change, and we don't really understand how is this going to affect us? How can we adjust and adapt to this change? Then it's not that easy if we're only used to using the technology but not understanding the underlying foundations of it. And so, for instance, if you think about electricity, a couple of years ago or a couple of months ago, I didn't spend much time thinking about electricity. Now it turns out I, with many other fellow Finns, are visiting Facebook groups on how to use different types of electricity companies and trying to save as much electricity as possible and having to realize how the wind and everything affects the electricity. And for somebody who already had that knowledge, it's much easier to adapt to the situation. It's much easier to know what kind of solutions we need, what kind of ways we could work around the situation we have come into. So the underlying understanding of technology is becoming more and more important for all of us, since we are living in a society where technology becomes more and more pervasive and also more and more intertwined with our physical world. But at the same time, the technology is becoming more and more hidden. So it's not an easy challenge to try to also learn about the underlying things because they are hidden. And so if we move to AI, maybe if we read books or if we watch movies on robot apocalypses or something like that, maybe this is what we think of. Not very invisible. This is very, very visible. But this is not what AI is, not at least today, and probably never will be. AI today is much more prevalent and everywhere around us. Sometimes we might notice it, sometimes we don't. So it's also a bit invisible. So we can find it in our voice assistants, we can find it in recommendation systems that recommend us the next song on Spotify. We can have it in our robots mowing our lawns, etc. But it's all around us. And it's not these do-it-all machines. It's something that does very small things, different tasks with some kind of certainty. So if we look at a definition of what AI is, there are lots of them. But for instance, the European Commission talks about AI being systems that display, they don't say that they are intelligent, but they display intelligent behavior in a way that the systems analyze what's going on around them, analyzing their environment, previous data, what's happened before, what's everybody else doing, what's happening around me now. So based on that data, they analyze that, and then they take some kind of action to solve a specific problem or a specific goal. So it's not an all-round machine that could do anything. It's a solution to a very specific problem or a specific task that is then done in either or with or without the involvement of a human being. And just like the digitalization also before we started talking about AI, AI will affect all areas of society and already is affecting all areas of society. It will be used for solving small problems. It will be used to solving big problems, complex problems, global problems. So we have a lot of possibilities with AI today. And at the same time, when we have a new technology or an old technology, we also know that no technology comes with only positive consequences. There are also backsides to all technology that we have. To mention one with AI, one that's been discussed quite a lot, I think at least, in the media also during last years, is how technology isn't, well, technology is neutral. The computer, the machines that we use, they have no values, they have no morals, they have no ethics. So the technology itself, that's neutral. But the minute we as humans start creating software for that computer, the technology isn't neutral anymore. Because if I create a software that solves a problem for me, and then I realize that, hey, this is a software that could be used by others as well. In another culture, for somebody else, in another situation, that software might not work as well, because it has been created from my perspective for my needs. And this is something that we can see in different examples, more recent and older ones. This is it has a couple of years on its neck already, but it's one that often gets mentioned when we talk about these problems with bias when we talk about AI, because the AI solutions, they work on previous data. So there was a situation where Amazon, the big tech company, had to take out an AI recruiting tool that they had used to take care of the big part of the application. So all the first round of taking out all of the applicants that were not going to get the job anyway. But it turned out it turned away all the women. No woman got further in the recruitment process. So they started thinking about what's going on here. There's something strange about this. And they realized that the old data that the recruitment algorithm was trying to work with was the previous workers at Amazon, which were very male-dominated. So if there was anything related to being in a women's club or something like that in the resume, it automatically got taken away. There have been examples of face recognition algorithms that have been trained on white persons, which then has had the consequence of darker faces not being recognized. Or cameras where we've had this mechanism that doesn't take a picture if the person in the camera blinks, with the result that if you have Asian background and you smile, the camera won't take a picture because it thinks that you're blinking. And also the discussion on Google Translate that got into the news and in social media also a couple of months ago, where people were blaming Google that the translations were so bad. In the example above, we have the Finnish language is neutral, so it just has hän, so no he or she, just hän. And if I translate then some sentences, this is a bit of a language bath now for you viewers as well, if you don't know Finnish. So the only sentences that become she in the translation is that I'm at home when the kids come from school and that I work from home. Nothing about me being a researcher, me being a programmer, me being a training taekwondo or going to the gym. Those were all translated as male. And of course, this depends on the data that these algorithms learn from. So we should be better at getting solutions where we actually talk about what should be, not exactly what is. And how can we start getting more perspectives into these systems so that we also get to solutions that work well for others, that are fair, that are transparent, that we could actually know that this decision has been made based on these facts. So if we think about a technology, lots and lots of things are possible. We have gone through a situation where things that we saw as science fiction 20 years ago are science facts today. We have it in our pocket, or we do it every day, and we see it as an ordinary day of or thing in our everyday life. So we have lots of possibilities. But then the question also is that what systems and solutions do we actually need? Because we've seen very many systems that aren't good. We've seen bad systems, systems that don't do what they should do. And we've seen systems that we maybe won't even need. And we've seen systems that have been ordered for somebody to use, and then they realize that, hey, this isn't actually what the user needs. So we need more persons involved in actually deciding on what systems we do use and have, and what problems we want to solve. Because in the end, that also comes down to what kind of a society we want. What kind of society do we want to leave for our children? What kind of tools do we want? And how do they affect us as individuals and also our opportunities as a society? So in the same way that we've been talking about digital competence for all, that everybody needs some kind of level of digital competence, we're now also approaching something called AI for all, that we're thinking about everybody needing to have some kind of knowledge about AI, knowing what it actually entails. What can we expect from AI? What can we not expect from AI? What kind of problems do we think that it can solve? What can it not solve? AI skills, what can we do with AI? How can we use AI tools? How can we create our own AI tools? What kind of attitudes do we have towards AI? All of these things are such that we now think are important for everybody, regardless of who you are, regardless of the age, and also regardless of what field you're in. Because if you think you're in an organization and they're going to order a new system, or you're creating a new system yourself, you need to understand technology, but you also need to understand the needs of the users, the needs of the broader user group that's actually going to be involved in using that or being, in one way or another, connected to that system and that solution. So in all, it's become very important with human-computer interaction. And once upon a time, we were talking about racing against machines, but we're now talking more and more about racing with machines, that we need to have this combination, that we need to see how can we, together with the system, do something new. And this requires learning. This requires that we know what are the possibilities, what are the opportunities, what are the consequences and the risks. And here we can then think of, so you could, for instance, if in your own work, think about what tasks would you like to get rid of? What bugs disguised as features don't you like? What kind of aspects of the systems you use would you like to take out? Because that's possible. We just have to look at the tools and the systems we need, and then also be able to create our own. So start there, start thinking about what could we change with the things we have? Or do I have an idea? Because everything starts with an idea. What could I do that could make my life easier, or my job easier, or everybody's life easier? Because the tools are now at everybody's hand. And we can't outsource all of these questions and answers to a narrow group of people. And if you're interested to learn more, I will now switch to Swedish in a while, but this is a course on the FITech network. So we have now a Swedish MOOC on Introduction to Computer Science or Information Technology. Så om du är intresserad av att lära dig grunderna i informationsteknologi så finns det nu en öppen MOOC på FITech. Ja jos haluat kielikylpyä ja opiskella tietojenkäsittelytiedettä ja tietotekniikkaa ruotsiksi, niin nyt FITechin sivulta löytyy ruotsinkielinen MOOC tästä asiasta. Ja niillä sanoilla, med de orden, with these words, I want to thank you all. Thank you.